Ladies and gentlemen, citizens of the universe, this is Roster Watch. My name is Alex Dunlap. I'm joined by Cody Carpentier. And Cody, it's draft week, dude. You're already en route down to the draft house where we're gonna have awesome coverage again this year with, I guess, for the fourth or fifth straight year with our buddies over at Player Profiler. We'll have those videos embedded over at rosterwatch.com, so you'll be able to check us out and be able to have our live NFL draft coverage there from the draft house with those guys on the actual days of the draft, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So make sure that you're tuned in over there. But we'll have regular shows on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday this week. But Cody, it's draft week, dude. We're 72 hours out. Um, we have now reports are starting. It was like clockwork.
The Monday data dump, baby.
Yeah,
Just
from McShay and from his McShay's former colleague over at ESPN, Adam Schefter, with just a bunch of news about how this could shake out. That's making me think that maybe the draft is not such a flat circle after all. With everything coming back into focus, there's the Shedeur Sanders stuff. I think, though, honestly, what I find most interesting is that from both McShay and from Adam Schefter today, and from what I was listening, I was so interested in this Jacksonville stuff that I tuned in earlier on 1010XL to listen to our friend Mike Dempsey, who had on Chad Reuter from NFL.com. Just this apparently Mason Graham at 5 is not considered any kind of lock whenever you talk to NFL teams and talk to NFL personnel.
I said it last week when I was listening to John Shipley on 1010XO. He said, right now it feels like it's likely Mason Graham. Will Campbell's in the conversation, but it would not shock me if they took Ashton Jeanty. And, I've always thought that was stupid. But with Travis Etienne's contract coming up, Tank Bigsby, as you would say, he's not the best back in the league, period. You add a guy like Ashton Jeanty, and he is a player that changes the entire dynamic of the offense. And he, in the words of John Shipley, I don't know if he said this or if he got this from somebody, but to his purview, he thinks, or Jacksonville thinks, that Jeanty would be the best piece for Trevor Lawrence on the football team, period.
You know what, man? For people watching on YouTube, I know that the podcast audience will have to imagine it, but you kind of have a natural backdrop right now that looks like it's like a fake green screen. You got some nice trees blowing in the background.
I'm sitting in a nice little like a half lanai situation. So it's like enclosed, but it's technically outside.
Yeah,
the trees are flowing a little bit.
Yeah, you look like you're on location, man. It looks like that would be a good permanent spot. Dude, I just think, you mentioned the stuff about Jeanty. And so what McShay had said and what Schefter had said was, and obviously, who knows, they could be talking to different sources, right? But in their reports coming out of the weekend, both say that Gladstone and Liam Cohen were, all right, okay. What they said in their press conference that we know that's available to all the public and all the media is that it's a statement pick. It's a pick that's gonna kind of define what they want to be doing and the type of player that they want to build around, right? That they want to make a statement pick. And what I had thought the whole time was like, all right, well then that makes the Mason Graham make all the more sense because you have Gladstone.
That's not a statement, though. That's not a statement.
But it's kind of a statement of we're going to keep drafting the way I had drafted whenever I was in Los Angeles, where we didn't mind if guys had short arms on the defensive line like Fisk and Kobe. And
in the second and third round.
Well, right. And that's the thing. It's like, those were players that I got at relative discounts, right? He could be thinking that. But I also thought it's like he sort of came up steeped in this this culture where Aaron Donald was such a valuable player, a little bit of an undersized defensive tackle. And I put all those things together. But then, it's now being suggested that don't sleep on an offensive skill player here. And the immediate thing that came, with both Schefter and McShay is they started to invoke the name Ted McMillan at 5. And with what Schefter was saying is, for one, he talked about, will there be any trades, right? Who could get dealt in the draft? And he said that, so and this is a quote from his article. This is on ESPN Plus. So don't want to read it word for word, but he basically said, like, the draft weekend is a busy time for trades. Here are players on rookie contracts who could be deemed expendable, right? And he says Will Levis, Treylon Burks, Kayvon Thibodeau, Evan Neal, Jalen Hyatt, Sam Howell, Tyree Wilson, which is interesting, Greg Newsome, Travis Etienne, Odafe Owe, George Pickens, Rashad White, and Kayshon Boutte. And then he said here are the veterans that could be available via trade. And he lists Jalen Ramsey, Jair Alexander, Kirk Cousins, Dallas Goedert, Mark Andrews, Trey Hendrickson. So no surprises there with the veterans who could be available via trade. But I did find it interesting, not that it matters for fantasy. I found it interesting that Tyree Wilson's available for trade. That's going to go down as just one of the worst picks that that we called the whole time. But Travis Etienne is just interesting to me when it coincides with this stuff about how you want an offensive skill player on the offense. And the thought is, from what McShay was saying, he was saying, whenever you watch Trevor Lawrence at Clemson, he had all these tall wide receivers. Like, he's already got Brian Thomas there. What if you bring in a Ted McMillan? And then
they have Gabe, even though nobody talks about him.
I know. And then, dude, and then Adam Schefter, whenever he was talking about McMillan, he was saying that he's drawing comparisons to Mike Evans and Liam Cohen's, like all this. I'm like, I'm pulling my hair out, and I'm like, well, I don't think Ted McMillan's a top 5 pick, dude. And I think I'm not sure I can make a mock that has him going at 5, even if we're getting all this information. Whenever I think of a skill player that is a statement pick that could actually really help the offense, and with this stuff that Travis Etienne is take your blue chip player. Like, I'd hate taking a running back this early, but it's got to be Ashton Jeanty. Like, doesn't it have to be over Ted McMillan?
It's 100% Ashton Jeanty. Here's the thing, and I think, we can tie these two notes together, is that McShay said it too, talking about Jacksonville and talking about McMillan. He's like, I talked to multiple people, and guess where I have McMillan? He goes, I have McMillan 50th on my top 300 big board, 50th. And he goes, there's teams that have him similar, and there's teams that have him opposite, meaning like a number 10 type of a player. Like, it's a weird class, man. He said, he also gave notes. He said, this class, like the wide receiver 1 is considered the wide receiver 4 or 5 last year, tackle 1, 4 or 5 last year, like things like this. Like, that just gives you the real understanding. We've talked about running back, D tackle, edge in this class, but those other positions, quarterback, receiver, and tackle, it's a vastly different situation. Of course, he's going to pull the Mike Evans comps because of Liam Cohen, period, and because of his ball skills. I totally get it. But
that's not a statement pick.
Like I said, it's people running out the best case scenario, they're just like high end comps. And no, it's not a statement pick. No, that because we've seen receivers go in the top 10 year after year after year after year, and guys that have better profiles than Tet does, even though statistically Tet's is pretty strong. It's not a statement pick. Like you said, running back in the top 10 is a statement pick, period. Bijan was, Saquon was, Jameer was at 12. Like, those were statement picks. Those were surprising picks. So when you say statement, I definitely don't think of Tet McMillan, even though the name was floated out there. And we haven't heard Tet McMillan's name around this pick for the better part of a month and a half.
Yeah, no, it's kind
of.
What
about Jaden Higgins in the second round? Like, Jacksonville, like, if you're like, okay, we want to get this big guy, like, okay, so why don't you just kick the can to the second round, and you're picking at 36, 70, and 88. You got 4 picks in the top 88. It's like, get it. If you want to get a big receiver, get a big receiver later. Like, Tet's not, I don't know. That's kind of my, I've soapboxed about Tet enough.
Okay, but Higgins or just like Trey Harris or something. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
It doesn't feel like there's that big. I mean, does it feel like there's that big of a chasm of a difference between those two, to where it's like you could get Jeanty, or you, like, even if you don't want to get Jeanty, just take, I don't know.
I'm not putting Tet in that final mock draft. I guarantee you, I'm not putting in there.
And it's like there's stuff coming out now that we've kind of known all along. It's like, oh, Kelvin Banks is going to go earlier than people think. Will Johnson Will Campbell at 4 is probably not a good pick. People are just now saying it. They're just now saying that taking him at 4, it's probably like it's what we've been saying the whole time. It's a needs-based reach. What is your thought on the whole Will Campbell thing?
I think it's probably a sure thing.
You still think it's for sure?
Yeah, I heard a report last week that Campbell had a sit down with Vrabel and Vrabel posed like questions. I'm sure he did this to everybody, but he posed questions. And Campbell had a very good interview with Vrabel. I heard that, and Vrabel reacted well to it. He liked him. So it feels like a natural thing where he comes in, can play tackle year one. And if they deem after year one that it's not quite the fit, they can bump him inside, come back to tackle next year, potentially, or bump him to the other side. I don't know, but I've entertained the thought, and I did a show about this on my other channel, and I said like surprising picks. Like any way you slice it, I think New England goes tackle. If it's Calvin Banks, the other one like is a wild card is like Josh Simmons. It's like,
I mean, I've started thinking, I'm like, man, there's got to be some kind of Ohio State connection there.
Of course, of course he was around that campus, and like I told you last week, Vrabel's pro day tour was not very big. He went to Texas, and he went to Boston College, and he went to maybe Ohio State. Like that was like 3 schools he went to, and then Elliott Wolf went to like UCLA, somewhere else, and then Boston College. But none of them were listed for LSU. I know they actually had their private workouts, but they didn't go to their pro days. I do think it's inherently wrong. I listened to Duke Manyweather talk about Will Campbell, and like I have some belief there. Like I get, and he works with them. Duke Manyweather's O-line masterminds up in.
Well, you gotta remember that whenever Duke Manyweather talk, it's
like an agent. Yeah,
he pumps his bags. So
of course, but he's he's one of the few voices I trust in the offensive line room, but he's not his agent, but he's kind of like in that spot. I still think he's a really good tackle, really good offensive lineman. Do I think it's bad? Do I think it's wrong? I think it's probably right, but I do think it's kind of bad. I would personally prefer Banks there, and again, like here's my problem, and here's my one hookup is that people will say, well, if Josh Simmons wouldn't have torn his patellar tendon, he'd be in this conversation. He'd potentially be the 4th pick. And I go, all right, well, if Vrabel went to Ohio State and Vrabel has a good relationship with everybody at Ohio State and Vrabel knows Simmons on a personal level, I don't know if that's true. I'm just assuming. Wouldn't you think that maybe Vrabel knows about as much as anybody's going to know about that situation, and that if they would have taken him there, and if they grade him from a play perspective there, wouldn't you just take him there?
Yeah, I wonder if
or trade down maybe and have to take him. I don't know. Like everybody says like there's 3 blue chip guys.
But the thing is, Cody, who's trading up to 4? It's the worst pickle spot in the whole.
Exactly. Crap. It's Carter. It's Hunter. Those are like the guaranteed blue chippers, and everybody else is like, well, it's like, so okay, so if it's actually between pick 4 and pick 35, everyone's about equal. Not really, but about equal. Okay, well, so what's the difference if I take Josh Simmons at 4 or not? That's kind of my thought. Like,
have we got? So he tore his ACL on October 12th. Simmons did. Have we gotten any updates on his recovery timeline other than him saying I remember him up there at the combine saying that he feels like he's way ahead of schedule, even though he's not going to work out, and that before the draft he was going to be, but I haven't heard anything about his recovery timeline or if he's, how he's moving and stuff like that. It would be helpful. It'd be helpful to know that stuff because, dude, if you do watch some Simmons, that's a really good player.
Well, his agent's Drew Rosenhaus, so good luck getting anything out of it. That's not going to be positive.
What?
His agent is Drew Rosenhaus. I said, so good luck getting anything out of it from a update perspective. Unless it's going to be super positive.
Right. Well, we know how Rosenhaus works. But yeah, I was thinking the other day, what if they just shocked the world and they took a Josh Simmons?
Wouldn't shock me at all.
Yeah, dude, you're telling me if we're sitting there at the draft house, they take Josh Simmons at 4, we're not standing up and going, "Oh my god."
I would, you know what I would do? I would slap the table and I would say, "I effing knew it," and it would be from like not from like a I called it perspective, but like I knew this was BS.
You knew that there was something that just it doesn't fit exactly right.
Yep.
Right? Something like that feels like dude, he's a really talented guy that moves well, that has a lot of length and traits, and it's like, you're drafting for the next 5 years. You're drafting for the guy that's going to be, I mean, he's going to be the blindside protector for your franchise quarterback.
And you know what's even more weird? And like, I know we're talking about Simmons and we're talking about New England, but to boot off of Simmons just for a second, just because we're talking about the draft, we're talking offensive lineman, so I might as well bring it up. The fact that Donovan Jackson's name, who's the guy that played guard, and then when Simmons went down this year, he bumped outside and played tackle and showed his versatility. The fact that his name isn't like consensus in the first round has also kind of like everyone like gives, Gray Zabel from North Dakota State, like, oh, he's got the versatility to do X, Y, Z. His arms aren't exactly long. I think Donovan Jackson's got like 34.5 or 35-inch arms. Like, he's got the versatility to actually move all over the offensive line. You just don't hear his name quite as much.
Do you is the DraftKings Sportsbook available there in Florida? Have you tried it yet?
Man.
I don't know.
Just Hard Rock. Just Hard Rock.
Okay. And you were there last night, right? And you said that they didn't have draft stuff yet.
No, man. I went up there, I pounded on the kiosk because like, give me the draft, and nothing came out.
Did you ask them if they're going to have stuff by Thursday?
No, I didn't. There was a lot of people in there, and I just went, looked at it, went through the whole machine like twice, and they didn't have anything, so I just walked away.
Because at least on DraftKings, I think you can still get them at plus 325 to go first round.
Well, the good thing is the Hard Rock app does exist, so I'm banned from it for some reason, but I'm sure you're not.
I've never even downloaded it, but I did. I found out one time that I was blocked by DeAndre Hopkins on Twitter and had no idea why. So I could.
Mine's Deebo Samuel, so we're
I could be banned by the Hard Rock Casino. All right, the couple other things was about a general vibe that you got from Todd McShay's write up this morning was that it looks like the edge rushers are going to be moving up because it feels like if Mason Graham is not the pick there at 5 and they go skill player, whether that's Jeanty or not. Jeanty is apparently no lock now to the Raiders. The Saints are apparently via multiple different reports not interested in Shedeur Sanders, more interested in Jackson Dart, but apparently not interested in Jackson Dart there at 9. You still have Shedeur Sanders as minus 200 on DraftKings to go in the top 10, but it's feeling more and more like, to me, like there's just been this buzz picking up around Pittsburgh about what they're going to do if Shedeur falls to them.
Is that still the odds? Minus 200 to go in the top 10?
Yeah.
Can you get it the opposite way?
No, you can't do that. Damn. Yeah, but the markets are telling us that maybe somebody still is interested in trading up. Dude, there could be somebody out there that's kind of hiding in the weeds, right? Ready to move up. But
let me ask you that, because you brought this up. This is a good thing. I talked about this on another show. Is one thing that could shock you, kind of like the Penix thing last year, is a team that you don't see thinking about quarterback, a team that has not said a word through the whole process. San Fran's at 11, Miami's at 13, and Indy's at 14. And everyone's going to go, well, San Fran's got Brock Purdy, but they haven't extended him. Miami has Tua. We all know the Tua situation. And Indianapolis has 2, projectile running quarterbacks. And what if they decided, like, I know Ballard's been kind of kicking the can on somehow keeping himself on the hot seat while, like, getting more opportunities. Like, what if he drafted, a Dart or a Shedeur there, like a pocket passer, and was like, all right, I got another shake at it. Like, I'm just saying, those 3 teams came to mind, San Fran, Miami, and Indy, of like, I know nobody's even thinking about it. It's kind of like Atlanta last year. Nobody's even thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
do any of those ring a bell to you? Like the San Fran, I know San Fran's in a very weird spot, and from like a player's loss perspective, money spent on certain things, like would it completely blow you out of the water if they drafted like a dart?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
I mean,
I know it would like
I
be
haven't
a
even
shock to,
thought
like,
about it, but dude, I mean, think of Shanahan and Dart.
I love it. And then let Purdy walk after a year.
Shannon, and the thing was, Shanahan apparently wanted Mac Jones that year. Feels like that's a juiced up Mac Jones.
Mac's also there too, so it's like you got Purdy for this year. You got Mac as his backup in case Purdy gets hurt again. And then, let's say Mac has like some type of like, let's say Purdy goes down, Mac gets an opportunity. Mac, plays to like a 60th percentile of what Darnold did last year. Mac walks next year. Dart starts next year. Boom. Galaxybrain.com. But like, if I would have told you a year ago that Penix was going to go, you would have been like,
yeah,
they just paid Kirk Cousins.
Like, well, that at the time, clearly we don't need to relitigate that. I mean, I think the way that we all reacted to it's probably not as it wasn't nearly as bad as we all reacted to it as being, for sure. As far as I wanted to ask you about, I want to talk about 9, but I also wanted to talk about Ballard. I was just watching his press conference. What do you make of the fact of him saying, he got the question about how many blue chip players are there in this class? I got the idea that he doesn't think that there's a bunch of blue players in this class, right? He didn't say it, but that's kind of, he said we have 200, there's 256 players that are going to get drafted. He said we have like 150 to 170 that are even on our board. So
wow.
He said that but look, there's going to be a good player there, whether we're picking at 14, whether we're picking at 10, or whether we're picking at 25. Does using those specific numbers, does that mean anything to you? Because the first thing I thought, I was like, why would Chicago at 10 move down and let you get because what you would be trading up for would be Tyler Warren, who apparently they also covet, or a tight end like Loveland, who they said that they covet if Tyler Warren wasn't available. I don't know if that whole Bears tight end stuff is still going to even continue this week, or whether that was just like the last news cycle coming into this week. They're going to say, hey man, all that tight end stuff, that was draft season nonsense. But then so 14 and then 25 is Houston. I'm just like, well, Houston, what on earth is Houston?
I think they were just arbitrary numbers. I think it's more about the idea. And that's just saying, like you said, how many blue chip players are in this class. I think the consensus would tell you, and the only consensus that I think you would hear is Hunter and Carter are definitely blue chips. I think you'd have many people that would say Jeanty, many people that would say Graham, probably a fat chunk that would say Jalen Walker. Then you'd have the Tyler Warner, Colston Loveland people. So, and none of that is all going to be the same, other than those top 2, I'd say. So, consensus across the league is probably between 3 and 7 true blue chips.
The other thing Ballard also said to kind of help us level set. Again, I really need this, and I think some of our listeners might need this. Who, if they're as maniacal as we are, you probably need it, Cody. Everybody kind of needs to hear this right now, and that's that Ballard said. One thing you guys need to know is our board is nothing like what y'all think. It's.
I mean, I think it's athleticism based.
Yeah,
so. But
I think I think we all think that we've had it figured out, and we don't have this figured out. Let's just.
You're talking about from like a tight end perspective?
No, from everything. I don't know how the draft's going to go. I have no idea.
Can I give you some data points from the last 4 years about some consensus stuff? So, if you look at the last 3 or 4 drafts, and I'm using NFL Mock Draft Database. It's a place that basically aggregates all mocks from across the space, from everybody from Todd McShane, Daniel Jeremiah, down to Joe Blow, Tommy from the local, Cleveland sports radio, everything. So last year, 1 week out from the draft, so this was last Thursday, in 2024, the consensus had 6 correct
Out of
picks.
how many?
Caleb to Chicago. Okay, so sorry. So from the top 14 picks is what I was looking at. So in the top 14, Chicago, Washington, New England, Arizona were all hits. Minnesota at 11 with JJ McCarthy. They took him at.
Can you list out the numbers, because sometimes it's contingent upon what the numbers.
All right. Number 1, Chicago took Caleb Williams. That was a lock.
Yeah.
That was chalk. Washington, Jaden Daniels, lock. New England, Drake May, lock. Arizona, Marvin Harrison Jr., lock. 11, Minnesota, JJ McCarthy. They traded up to 10 and took him, but it was still a hit. Denver, Bo Nix was a hit. If you go back to 2023, Bryce Young at number 1 to Carolina was a hit. Will Anderson to number 2 with Houston, even though they took him at 3 because they took Stroud at 2, still a player to team hit. Bijan at 8 was a hit to the Atlanta Falcons. Peter Skoronski at 11 to the Tennessee Titans was a hit. So there was 6 in 2024, 4 in 2023, and then in 2022 with Trevon Walker to Jacksonville at 1, Aiden Hutchinson 2 to Detroit, and Evan Neal to the Giants.
That was it.
Was
that
3.
5?
He took him at 7, but they mocked it at 5. So it was just still a team hit because they had 2 picks in the top 7.
Okay,
remember? All right. So those are just like an example of like the last 3 years. There was 6 hits last year, 4 the year before, and 3 in 2022. Now, what I did was, and the cool thing, this is one of my favorite things about the NFL Mock Draft Database, is they take every player and team and they have a mock draft popularity. And it'll give you a percentage of mocks 1 week out that have this player in this spot to this team.
Okay.
Right? And so this year, interesting numbers. I'll read them to you here in a second. But the biggest note I had was using the NFL Mock Draft Database, look at the last 4 draft cycles, team and player matches with a 30% or better popularity rating in the top 15. 30% was just an arbitrary number. When I started looking at it, I wrote down. When you look at it and you break it up by percentages, if somebody has a 60% to 100% popularity match, 13 players in the last 4 draft cycles had 60% or better 1 week out from the draft. 11 were hits. 11 out of 13 were hits.
So
2 misses. Joe Alt to the Tennessee Titans last year was a 78% hit. They didn't take him. They took J.C. Latham. So it was a positional hit, but it was the wrong player. And then Pat Surtain 3 years ago to the Dallas Cowboys, he was gone. Remember the conversation was Pat Surtain, J.C. Horn, Micah. They took Micah. Those were only 2 misses in that percentile, 60 to 100%. Now, if you don't get to 60%, if you're 40% to 59%, 8 players hit this. Only 1 was correct, and it was J.J. McCarthy last year.
What about it?
From 40 to 59%.
Do you know if it's less than 40%?
30 to 39%, 15 players the last 4 draft cycles between 30 and 39%. 3 were hits. Will Anderson to Houston, Evan Neal to the Giants, and Bijan Robinson to the Falcons. Everything else was a miss. There was 4 positional hits, which means, right position, wrong player to the team. And then the bonuses was at 29%. You had Jalen Waddle to Miami and Penei Sewell to Detroit. They're both 29%. But the overarching takeaway here is if you have a 60% or better popularity hit, 11 for 13 in the last 4 draft cycles. 1 week out from the draft.
Well, who are those?
Ready
those
for this?
guys?
Ready for this year's? You ready for this year's data?
It's gonna be Mason.
All right.
It's gonna be everybody.
It's just wait. This is the best part. Number 1, Cam Ward to the Titans, 95%. Travis Hunter, number 2 to the Browns, 81%. Abdul Carter, number 3 to the Giants, 73%. Will Campbell, number 4 to the Patriots, 68%. Mason Graham, number 5 to the Jags, 70%. Ashton Jeanty, Raiders, 54%. Armand Membu, 54% to the Jets. Jalen Walker, 61% to the Panthers. And then it's a drop-off down to Shador at 38% to the Saints, which we know is kind of wrong. 41% for Tedero McMillan to the Cowboys. 55% for Omari and Hampton to the Broncos, but that's at 20.
What about Mike Green to the Bengals?
The Bengals consensus right now is Derek Harmon, and it's 12%. Mike Green is a 34% guy to the Falcons.
Yeah. That makes
So the biggest takeaway here is that there's 6 guys with a 60% or better popularity marking here. And it's the top 5 and then Jalen Walker. And we've been penciling in the top 8.
Right. But it's getting.
And your odds again, it's been 11 for 13 the last couple of years. So there could be a miss in here. It's 84% of them, right? So if you had a miss in here, and what I'm trying to talk through is we feel good about 1, 2, 3. Feel pretty good about 4. But if 5 is wrong, there's your one miss out of 5. And it's Jeanty. Jeanty's at 54%, right? Armand Membu's 54%. That's where the tizzy comes in, is 5 with Jags. Jalen Walker still falls to 8.
What? Okay, so yeah. So what if you send? So let's just say, okay, 1, Cam Ward, 2, Travis Hunter, 3, Abdul Carter, 4, let's just say Will Campbell, 5 to Jacksonville, Ashton Jeanty. What do the Raiders do then?
It has to be Graham. I don't know how Spytech from Michigan and Brady at Michigan don't say, look at how disgusting this front 7 looks.
You're right. I forgot Spytech's what is the Spytech Michigan connection?
He I can't remember. I think he played there the year before, the year after. I think it was the year after Brady. They have a connection there, though.
Okay.
Spytech.
So then that's Graham. And then 7. The interesting thing about 7 from Schefter's most recent reporting is that
that feels like a wild card.
Membu is now looks like a top 10 lock, with the Raiders at number 6 and the Jets at number 7 being possible destinations. But he also talked about, as with regards to the Jets' number 7 pick, that they've been really quiet about what they want to do. Right? It's been quiet. There's been more secrecy than usual than you get with the Jets under Aaron Glenn. But he says that Tyler Warren was in for a visit. They're members of the organization who are enamored with him, right? But he said if they target the other side of the ball, that look out for them to target Jahdae Barron. Who, Glenn?
Did he say any other names? Because McShay said 3 names for the Jets on defense.
He said Jahdae Barron is an option. Who did McShay say?
Okay, because McShay said Jalen Walker and Mason Graham as well.
Okay, all right. Let's just say they go Tyler Warren. You don't think that they will?
I don't know
either. But let's just say it.
I think the Jets are, the Jets and Saints are the 2 toughest for me in the top 10.
That's what I'm trying to. All right, so let's pencil in Tyler Warren to see if I can get to where we want to go here. Okay, 8. Let's just send him Jalen Walker, right, to the Panthers. 9. Now we get to the Saints. Now,
so Mason Graham went at 6, right?
Okay. And so now let's say that we get to number 9 with the Saints. And we know that, or what I'm getting now is that they don't want Shadur, right? Not interested. Feels like that's kind of coming online now.
McShay said the Saints. He said, what I'm hearing is the Saints not only aren't interested in Shadur at 9, but they wouldn't take him at 40.
Okay. Well,
so we can X that out.
And the reporting this morning from Schefter is similar, saying that they're more hot and heavy after Jackson Dart, but not necessarily going to take him there, which goes along with some of the reporting that we talked about last week, Cody, from Nick Underhill, when he was saying that, dude, this is a full rebuild now at this point, right? They're not. So as usual, Underhill, one of the really good local guys to follow with all this stuff. If that's the case, you and I brought it up last week, but he brought it up here Schefter did is he brought up the Trevor Penning issue. He said that there's question marks with Trevor Penning, and they could be looking to me, I see Armand Membu and Michael Williams on the board here, and I think they're going to pick one of those guys. I think they're going to go on the line. And which do you think that they would end up going with? I'm completely flummoxed here because after that, I kind of don't know where I would send the other guy.
Well, Membu doesn't fall past the Cowboys, period.
I guess
They
I
had that
didn't
right
think, I
guard
guess I
hole.
just didn't. I was thinking more like I was thinking more like, you know, would Membu? I would think that Membu and or Michael Williams would either go at 10. Well, would the 49ers take Membu over Banks? I think so.
I don't know.
Could it go Membu at 9 and then Michael Williams to the Bears at 10 and just forget all this?
It wouldn't shock me. I mean, a lot of tight end, a lot of tackle, and we always forget that edge spot is definitely a need.
Yeah. So just a whole lot. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm any better off from going over this stuff now than I was before. I think that mainly where I'm been most concerned is about there to some degree at pick 4, and then at pick 5, just all this stuff, this consensus sort of in total insider stuff about, hey, tap the brakes on the Mason Graham to the Jags here. And look, if it is going to be an offensive weapon and they take Ted McMillan, I'm just going to throw my hands up in the air and just say, look, man, either they know something I don't know, or like I just witnessed something that I think is totally crazy given everything that we know about the way that this draft is set up, with the way that things could fall as far as the combos of players that you can get, and just in general what's been said about, you know, Liam Cohen and Gladstone as far as the way that they envision taking a player that is representative representative of a statement of like, this is how we're going to be doing things in Duval moving forward.
I think that's right. If I know we want to get the top 10 picks right, but can we just talk about the top 10 players really quick? Just dial this in, then I'm done for the day. So we know Cam, Travis, Abdul. Campbell's going to go top 10. A lot of helium around, obviously, Jalen Walker, Mason Graham. So that gives us a 6.
Mm-hmm. Michael Williams, he's going to go in the top 10. Armand Membu's going in the top 10. Or
you're sure, even though what we just talked about?
We're talking top 10 players, man. I would have those guys in my top 10.
But I'm not asking about your top 10. I'm asking about 10. The draft.
Yep.
The top 10.
But the top 10 pick.
Is Tyler Warren a top 10 pick?
Everybody's told me he is.
But there's only one spot for him. Well, I mean, technically, there's the Bears. I don't believe the Bears. The Jets feels like it's the only spot.
I think there's 2 spots. I think it's Bears and Jets. You got Greg Gabriel, who knows those Bears, saying if he's there at 10, the Bears are taking him.
Gosh.
He knows the Bears, dude. He might be an old, cranky old boomer, but he still has a bunch of sources.
Jeanty. So Cam, Jeanty, Hunter, Carter, Campbell, Jalen, Michael. That's still 7. 8 would be Membo.
Yeah. Did you say Warren?
9 would be Warren. And then you have a wild card with the Saints. Kind of. I think that's the spot, right? Maybe I didn't say Graham.
Did you say here? Count them again. I think that I think we might have 10. Here, also here.
All right. So okay. Cam. Okay, I got a pen and paper. You say him.
Cam Ward. All right. Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Ashton Jeanty, Will Campbell, Mason Graham, Jalen Walker, Mykel Williams, Tyler Warren, Armon Membu. Those are the top 10.
This is Anthony Richardson, and you're listening to RosterWatch.
This is AJ Brown, and you're listening to Roster Watch.
This is Josh Allen, and you're listening to RosterWatch.